Hi beautiful souls, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to do a tag, which I haven't done a tag in months and months and months, and this tag's actually like 2 months old, but I thought I would do it because I've been getting back into watching TarotTube again. I was taking a little bit of a break just because of personal things. I was taking a break from YouTube in general. And so I'm just having a lot of fun going back and watching all of these fun tarot tags. And this one is so up my alley. I love romance books. So this is called Tarotmance Tropes tag. This is by Tarot Magpie, and I'm really excited to get into it. So yeah, my favorite genre of books is romance. So I love reading all of these different tropes. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's romance books and tarot. So this is right up my alley. So number one is enemies to lovers, which enemies to lovers is my favorite trope in romance books. So this prompt is a deck, style, or system you've insisted just wasn't for you until you realized it was. So I have two different things to talk about for this one. The first is pip style decks. I swore up and down that pip decks were not my thing. I was like, why would you not want a fully illustrated deck? I just didn't understand that before I really started to read tarot and fully understand it. I didn't understand why anybody would want to read a pip deck. It didn't make sense to me. Just because the way that I kind of understood tarot and learned tarot, like what made it really click for me was the Green Witch Tarot, and that deck is very illustrated. The pictures made sense to me and connected to the meanings, and that's what made me learn tarot and made it really finally click in my brain. So I just didn't understand why anybody would want a pip deck. But now that I have, been a tarot reader for many years now, I love a good pip style deck. And I said in the beginning that I didn't get it. I don't want to buy pip decks. And I forgot to grab it, but the Pagan Otherworlds is also one of my favorite pip style decks, but I do enjoy my pip decks to have a little bit of something in the artwork that I can intuitively get something off of. I don't like just pips lined up necessarily. I do like a little bit of illustration, I guess. But yeah, this is the Antique Anatomy Tarot, and this is one of my all-time favorite decks. I've been having a love affair with it recently. It's just one of my all-time favorites. And this is a very pip style deck. And what I've kind of come to terms with is that my brain is very much a fully illustrated image constantly. I'm just constantly stimulated in my head with imagery and, imagination, all of those things. And so a deck like this to me somehow quiets all of that. And it's a palette cleanser for me. It gives me breathing room. And this deck is just beautiful. And it has little hints in the artwork to kind of an RWS meaning. The guidebook for this deck is very RWS, very straightforward. But to me, it just really opens up the door to anything you get intuitively off of it. The colors. And I love, love, love the majors in this deck as well. They're very simple, but beautiful. This is one of my all-time favorite decks. I filmed a video a few months ago talking about my all-time favorite decks ever, and this was in there. I tried to include a lot of those in this tag because I kind of have found myself kind of rotating just the same decks over and over. And this is just one of those main decks. Look at this Wheel of Fortune, gorgeous. Yeah, so I'm thinking about making that video again because it's all the same decks. I didn't like how I was speaking in that first video, so I ended up scrapping it. But yeah, I mean, there are hints, but the majors are so good in this. So yeah, pip decks. Pip style decks. I said that that absolutely was not for me, and then it very much is. I love a good minimalistic style RWS deck. If you guys have any suggestions on decks like this that you really enjoy, or like the Pagan Otherworlds, there's another deck I'm going to be talking about later on that's similar as well. If you have any suggestions, please let me know, because I don't have that many of these in my collection, and it would be nice to have different styles when I'm feeling like different, when I'm feeling in a different mood or whatever. So let me know. The other one for enemies to lovers I wanted to talk about, I had to mention, was the RWS artwork. So I guess both of these are just styles I didn't like, because I don't think Pip style decks isn't really like a system. I guess that would be more Marseille, and I'm not very familiar with Marseille. So yeah. But this style of artwork of the original RWS, I was like, ugh, that's just not for me. I'm not an RWS girly as far as the original artwork goes. I loved the system. I loved dupes of this artwork, but I originally had the yellow box RWS. You can buy off Amazon, 20 bucks. That was kind of one of my first decks that I bought for the purpose of studying tarot. And I was so turned off by the artwork, the yellows in that deck. Everything looked the same. The pips to me just looked like the same artwork. I didn't understand. It just, something about that in my brain just did not mesh well. And then I bought some different versions of the original RWS, and now it is one of my all-time favorite decks ever. My favorite artwork. When I'm just feeling like I need a tarot deck without all the bells and whistles, I just want to go back to the basics, I bring this deck out a lot. This is probably one of my most read decks for other people. I have a few versions of it that I bring out and use all of the time, but I would say this is one of my most used decks ever. It's just an RWS. This one specifically that I'm showing you is the Conrad Stain 1909 deck. You can get it off of Make Playing Cards. It is the closest coloring to the original 1909 that you can get. And it's on really beautiful cardstock. But yeah, this artwork, all-time favorite. And I originally hated it so much because of that first deck that I got. So yes, so that is Enemies to Lovers, a deck style or system you've insisted just wasn't for you until you realized it was. All right, prompt number 2, we have Friends to Lovers, a deck you liked well enough, and then one reading deepened or changed your relationship with it. So for that one, I picked the Murder of Crows Tarot. So this is one that I kind of always knew I would probably like, just based off of aesthetics, based off of the style of it, and, you know, what it represents, and you know, this is totally up my alley. So I always liked it even before I had it. I loved seeing it on other people's channels. This is everything that I love. I love crows, and the crow tarot never worked for me. I love creepy artwork. I mean, it's just everything. I love this style of like low scarabeo where it doesn't have the titles of the cards on it. I do like a monochromatic deck once in a while, a black and white deck. So this was totally up my alley, but I didn't like immediately just fall in love with it. It's kind of, as I've worked with it, it's deepened. I guess it could also go in the slow burn category because there is a slow burn prompt. But I always liked this deck. And I never had a bad first impression of it, anything like that. I always liked this, and then as I worked with it, I was like, okay. And this one actually has, I believe this one has made it into my all-time favorite decks of all time. I don't know if it was in that original video. It might have been. But it's so truthful, and you would think that a deck like this would be mean because of the artwork, but there's something about it that's just very truthful, but not in a mean way. And I love, love, love the little guidebook that goes with this. So I love that it has now become a lover deck. Like, it is, I always liked it. I always knew I was going to get it at some point, and I'm just glad that it works for me and that I love it now and it's gotten into that category. I don't know, it's actually kind of quite comforting to me, supportive in the energy. It gives me what I need to hear. Not necessarily what I want to hear, but in a comforting, supportive way, even though this looks like so creepy and scary. Even the like really hard cards in here, like, what did I get that I was like, why did I get this? 5 of Swords or something like that. It's just the guidebook, the way that it depicts things, it just kind of gives you almost something to work with instead of just like hopelessness. Because sometimes when you pull like the Tower, you're like, oh my gosh, like, how is this helping me in any way? I kind of want to just pull a card and read from the guidebook because it's just so good. We got the 9 of Swords. So 9 of Swords, I'm glad we got kind of a shadowy card so that I can show you guys. I don't know what this guidebook's gonna say, so I might be proven wrong right here, but I don't know. Okay, so let's see. Okay. 9 of Swords. All of the horrors you face in this land, the most overwhelming are those that take shape in your mind. Pitiless wings, the color of the void, unfold before you. A shrill cry penetrates your bones. The demons in your dreams, your own demons, rob you of sleep. Fears, oppression, and insomnia. So it's almost like this one, this one might have not been a good example, but I feel like even with that, it's like, it's kind of affirming you in this like feeling, because this is a very hopeless card, right? But it's saying that all of the horrors you face in this land, they take shape in your mind. So it's almost like telling you it's not reality, it's in your mind, even though, you know, perception's reality, but your own demons rob you of sleep. The demons in your dreams, so it's your own demons. So I don't know, there's just something about it to me, even reading that, it almost gives you your power back. I don't know, that's just how I can explain it. But yeah, this was definitely a friends to lovers, a deck you liked well enough, and then one reading deepened or changed your relationship with it. Yeah, I did a reading. The one that kind of really stuck out to me was I did a reading about imposter syndrome, and that deck just totally blew me away with that reading. Okay, number 3 is Forced Proximity, a deck you used for a month, took on holiday, made yourself work with, that changed your relationship with it. So I haven't gone on a long vacation since I've read tarot that I can think of. No, I don't think I have. Because I wish I had some like vacation deck that I really bonded with, but usually I just take the decks that I already love on trips. But this one is a deck I kind of forced myself to use. This is the Druidcraft, and again, this is one I've always liked or loved. I love the artwork on it, but I haven't worked with it in depth for a long period of time, and I feel like that's where a lot of my deep relationships form with my decks, is when I use them for quite a long time. And actually recently in March I had a situation and I was dealing with grief and things, and I brought this deck out and I kind of forced myself to use it. I repurposed some of my tarot boxes, and I made these little like homes for pairs of decks, and I pair this one with the Mists of Avalon Oracle, and I was essentially just taking that little box with me when I want to do a reading. I was taking it outside, I was taking it to my kitchen table, just kind of taking it around to different places, and this was the only deck I was using, and my relationship has definitely changed with this. This is another one that I don't think it was in my all-time favorite decks of all time. It just hadn't made it there yet. It was like it was a runner-up. but this one has made it into my favorite decks of all time just because of the readings I had with it. I really deepened my relationship with it. I think I worked with it pretty exclusively for about 2 weeks. I'm not somebody who can work with a deck for a whole month and not touch anything else. That's just not how I am. But for me to exclusively work with one deck and actually actively work with it, like there are months where I only work with one deck, but I don't actively work with it every single day. I was reading with this deck twice a day, up to twice a day for 2 weeks, and it was my only tarot deck, and I loved it. And it really, I had a very profound reading with it, and there are a lot of like redhead women in this deck, and I'm a redhead or at least I am artificially, but I saw myself in this deck, and I saw like depictions of things I had gone through, and it just was so beautiful. So, Forced Proximity, a deck you used for a month, took on holiday, made yourself work with that changed your relationship with it, and that's the Druidcraft Tarot for me. Okay, next we have Soulmates. When it was just meant to be, a deck you fell in love with immediately. I brought out a few of these because I couldn't stick to just one, but anyways, I thought I would talk about this one. This is the Cozy Witch Tarot, and this one was also in my favorite decks of all time video, and will be when I refilm that, but this one was immediate love. Okay, I haven't had this deck that long. I've had it since October, so I think this is the newest. Yeah, this has got to be the newest deck out of all of these ones I'm talking about. And it was the newest deck at the time that was in that video, and it was just immediate love at first sight. It was just meant to be. Like, when I got this, I was like, I don't need any other deck. And when I feel like that, I'm like, wow, that is that's an all-time deck. That's a soulmate deck. When I would just want to pretend I have no other decks and only work with this. And I don't know. I got it in October. I was going through some stuff personally back then that, I mean, looking back, it wasn't as extreme as some mental health stuff I've had since then, but still, I was going through some stuff back then. And this deck just really was there for me, and it's so good. It's so comforting. And our energies just align. I don't know. There are certain decks that you'll read with, or that I read with, and it just doesn't vibe. The messages just aren't, I feel like just aren't in the same wavelength as me and what I'm trying to, find out about. It's like trying to talk about something completely different. And sometimes that's fine. But to me, when a reading just aligns with the energy I'm in and it makes sense, that's the kind of decks that I just immediately fall in love with, and that's this one. And it's so comforting, but it's just there for you. Like, I was recently doing some work with my therapist about like intentionally crying things out, and I got the Three of Swords in this deck. It's probably, I don't know, I found it. That took me a minute. This is the Three of Swords. It says it's okay to cry. After I literally just had a meeting with my therapist about crying it out. Are you kidding me? It's just so good. I think I'm actually going to do a little reading with this because I haven't done a reading today with this deck. But yeah, immediate love at first sight. I don't have any other deck in my collection like it at all. Like, I don't have a tarot deck that has like little sayings on it like this. I don't think. Yeah, I don't. And it's just so good. It's very like, if you're feeling very low energy, like you can't sit down and like have a deep reading and try to like rack your brain about what it's trying to tell you. This is such a good deck for that. If you have chronic illness, or you just are starting out, or you just don't have the energy, like, this is such a good deck. I don't love the guidebook. The guidebook's cute, but I find that this by itself is good enough. And the illustrations are really in-depth and cute, and it's witchy, it's cozy, it's supposed to be like very fall, and I love that energy of fall, so this deck's just chef's kiss, really. Okay, The other one that was a Soulmate deck I just quickly want to talk about was the Halloween Tarot. It's just meant to be. I don't know. Immediate love affair with this deck. I've talked about this deck so many times though, but I just needed to give it some love because I haven't talked about decks I love in a long time and really gushed about them. But yeah, this is everything I love in a deck. It's an RWS clone, but this deck is so good. I do kind of like true crime readings, and the artwork on this deck is so on point. It's really scarily accurate. I don't think it's kitschy and cute. I think it's very fair and accurate. It's one of those decks that's just, it blows your mind with how accurate it is. I use it all year round. It's just really good. And I immediately fell in love with this deck. I have 2 copies of it, so I guess that tells you. And then, okay, I'm not going to talk about the other deck because I'm only on prompt 4. We got to keep going. All right. So number 5 is a slow burn, a deck you didn't have the best first impression of, but the more you worked with it, the more you liked it. So that is going to be the Runic Tarot. So, okay. Again, all-time favorite deck ever. But I didn't have a good first impression with this for a few reasons. So the first thing is that this deck, when it got delivered to me, this was like years ago because I actually got it before I moved. So it got delivered. We had a sign on our fence back then to not deliver packages in the yard because our dogs would rip the packages. And the driver that day did not, I guess, see the sign or listen to the sign. And so the package got ripped up by my dogs. And so this was, I think this is Low Scarabeo, but it came in a big like box and it was ripped to shreds. But the deck itself was not touched. But I was just really like mad and like turned off about the deck because it got ripped up, and I wanted the whole experience because the deck comes in this like big box with the runes all on the inside, and it has this big beautiful book, and I was planning to like read the book and study runes with this deck, and that just didn't end up working out. I did get a replacement deck sent to me by Amazon, and I ended up keeping the original deck and then keeping the original book actually, and then putting it in the box, the new box. The book has like a little corner kind of like chewed on it, which I cut off. So the book is pretty much intact, but my first impression was just like, oh, seriously. And it's funny that I never used the new deck. I still have it. I never used the new book. So yes. And then I ended up edging this deck in black, and I didn't love how it kind of bled on to some of the like lighter cards. I don't know. I was just really like, turned off by it. But I loved the artwork, and so I didn't have the best first impression of just the experience with the deck. I always loved the artwork, but then I was just like, oh, it's ruined. Like, I edged it and I ruined it. And then I really like, this is one of those decks that I had for a while before I really just started to love it, and it was kind of just one reading. I guess it wasn't, I guess slow burn could mean a little bit different. Like, you just use it a little bit here or there, and then you like grow to love it. And I don't really have any decks like that. That's just not my personality. It's either like love or hate, kind of like hot or cold. I feel like I do have a little bit of in the middle decks, but none that were like slow burn. I feel like this one was though, because it was just slowly kind of like building up of like, wow, this deck is so good. And then it kind of smacked me in the face and had really profound readings with it. I put it away for like 2 years, maybe a year and a half or something. And then I pulled it out and was like, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And then it has just slowly grown from there. Like, I've had so many good readings with it. It has stayed consistent. So I guess that's kind of where the slow burn comes in, is that it stayed consistent. It stayed a good reader. It blows my mind every single time. I I love this deck the more and more I use it, and it's just so, so good. So that is the Runic Tarot for Slow Burn, a deck you didn't have the best first impression of, but the more you worked with it, the more you liked it. And the more I worked with this, the more I loved it. So that's my Slow Burn. Number 6, Opposites Attract. This deck is not your usual style, but you love it anyway. This one was hard for me because I don't really buy a lot of decks that aren't my style that I love. Usually I end up like, why did I get this? I know it's not going to work for me. One of the kind of main things that I don't like or isn't my style is modern decks. So I was going to bring out, what is it? I can't think of the name of it, but I really like this oracle, and it's kind of a more modern oracle. But I decided to bring out this one because animal decks are just not my thing. They are not my thing, but this deck is my style. But it isn't my usual theming. I have a ridiculous amount of animal decks for somebody that doesn't like animal decks. I think I have like 5 or 6, and that's just, I don't work with animal decks. This one is my style though, because I was going through this like 70s boho thing. I'm still going through it, but very much my style, very much like retro, and I don't know, it's just really like almost kind of like psychedelic, I don't know. But also like desert, I don't know, it gives me desert vibes. So this isn't my normal style in the way that it's an animal deck, but to me this isn't a typical animal deck, and it just works so good. I do like this artwork. It is funky, but I do like funky decks, and so that's my style. But again, it's just the animal aspect to it. But I love the sayings on it. I love that it's like different kind of setups on each card where the little saying is in a different spot. And I do love the little guidebook, how it brings in the animal, and you get that animal energy, but you also get like this really profound concept with it. I don't know, it's just so good. The animal is not like the main focus point in this deck. I think I'm going to pair this with my Cozy Witch, because this deck's just so good. And like when I got it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such my style, but it's an animal deck. Like, am I going to like it? But I love it. So this one and the Woodland Wardens is another animal deck I kind of love. This one I really love. Woodland Wardens is like the closest actual animal deck I would say that I love. But oh my gosh, this is so good. And it's almost like you don't have to incorporate the animal if you don't want to. But if you want an animal deck that works as just a regular oracle deck, this is such a good one. So this is definitely Opposites Attract. This deck's not my usual style, but I love it anyway. Yeah, love it. Okay. Number 7, Blind Date. An impulse buy, a gift, or a deck you got without much research but ended up really loving. So this one I actually got as an impulse, and I thought I wouldn't like it, but I got it as more of like I just want the original decks, the historical decks, the vintage decks, whatever. I was kind of going through a phase. So this is the Aquarian Tarot. And I originally was really freaked out by these faces on artwork I would see online of this. So I kind of had decided it wasn't for me. But I didn't watch a ton of videos on it or anything. But I ended up just one day was like, I'm going to buy it. I think I bought this and like the Morgan Greer at the same time, or I don't know. I bought this with a bunch of other decks, and it was kind of just like an impulse of like, I'll just throw it in there. Like, I'm just going to get it. Just to say I have it. And I didn't realize how much I would love it in person. There's something about this artwork that just really in person to me isn't as creepy. I don't know, these faces online, because it's like these really detailed faces on more like block style art. I don't know, it kind of freaked me out online, but in person it comes across a little bit differently. I love the majors in this deck, how they're kind of different from each other, and like the fonts are all different. There's just something about the like the size of the cards a little bit different than typical, and like the white on the cards is very like palette cleansing again. But yeah, I kind of just bought this as like, I'm just gonna throw it in my cart. And yeah, now that it's kind of coming back to me, it was like a bunch of decks I bought, and I was like, I'll just throw the Aquarian Tarot in there just to have it. And I was very pleasantly surprised at how much I really, truly, truly love this deck. And it's funny because one of my dogs actually like ripped this. She went crazy and like chewed up like 4 of my decks, which were all blue, which I found out, I guess that's like one of the colors that dogs can see. And this one, every single card is still intact. It has like bite marks and stuff on it, but she didn't, like the other decks, she kind of tore cards up to where it's not usable anymore. This one is still usable. You can see little like bite marks, but I love this deck, and I love that that kind of gives it character. It's kind of like rough on the edges, but I really love this deck. So that one was a blind date and impulse buy, a gift, or a deck you got without much research but ended up really loving. Okay, number 8 is Second Chance, a deck you planned to get rid of that worked its way back into rotation, or a deck you did move along and ended up repurchasing. So this was a hard one for me because I haven't repurchased any decks that I've gotten rid of. I do want to. I want to repurchase the Divine Feminine Oracle. I think that's what it's called. I think that that deck will really work for me if I get past the artwork, and I really want it back, but I ended up selling that one. But this deck that I chose for Second Chance is the Modern Witch. And it's funny because I'm actually getting rid of the original Modern Witch. And I ended up buying because I love this artwork so much. I was like, I can't get rid of it. I was going to keep it just because of the artwork, but it is so unusable for me. The cardstock is one of the most unusable cardstocks I've ever tried to use. It's so ridiculously thick, and I hate decks I can't shuffle. Like, ugh, tactile experience is 0. So I ended up buying the German version, which has a more flexible cardstock. And I ended up trimming it because it did have the German titles on it. But I'm so glad that I gave this deck another chance by buying the German version. I mean, most people wouldn't put in that much work for a deck like this, but it's so good. And I used it in a live tarot reading that I did on this channel recently, and it just works so good for clients. This is one that is modern. It's not my usual style again, but I love it, and I love having a modern deck sometimes for doing readings in the modern world, because I don't know, for something like a live reading where you don't know who you're going to get, and you're going to get a lot of people who are like online, obviously, because they're watching, YouTube live. I just feel like this is a perfect deck for the typical everyday person because it is modern and this is the world we live in. And I'm so glad I have a version of this deck I can shuffle because I love the artwork on it. So that is Second Chance, a deck you plan to get rid of that worked its way back into your rotation, or a deck you did move along and ended up repurchasing, and I have the Modern Witch Tarot. Okay, number 9. Okay, number 9 is Unrequited Love. You really want to love this deck, but it just doesn't love you back yet. Question mark. That's the Ethereal Visions. I've always loved this deck. I've always loved the aesthetic of it, the size of it, because it's a little bit bigger than a typical tarot. It's so gorgeous. It has bling on it. Like, this is who, like, if I don't know, like, I just want to be that cool girl that only has this as a deck, you know? It's very much that, like, clean girl aesthetic, that, like, bright, white, airy, natural. I don't know, just, I love that. And it's Art Nouveau, which I love. But this deck, it just doesn't read for me very well. I do have good experiences with this deck reading for other people and clients and things like that. But I recently brought this out. I was trying to kind of change up the decks I was using, and I love using this deck with the Dreamscape Oracle, which is also by Matt Hughes. As a pairing, they work really well together. And so after I got done using the Druidcraft for a long time, I wanted to use this and the Dreamscape as a little pairing, kind of force myself to use that for a while. But this deck, especially with what I was going through, it was just like, I don't know, the readings were just like, ugh, just making me feel like bad. They just weren't constructive in any way, and I don't know. I wish this deck worked for me. I'm gonna keep trying. I don't ever want to get rid of it. I think it's really beautiful, and I want to at some point just like change my relationship with this deck somehow. I feel like it's going to happen. I just have that feeling with some of my decks. It's like, I know that our time's gonna come. It's just not now. But yeah. Love this deck. I just don't know why it doesn't love me back. So that is the unrequited love. You really want to love this deck, but it just doesn't love you back yet. Okay. Number 10, last one. I have Love Triangle. 2 decks that are in competition with each other in your collection, or a pair of decks you always use together. Okay, so I decided to go with the in competition with each other. I definitely want to do a perfect pairs video because I have a lot of decks that I love to use as a pairing, but I'm not somebody that like always has to use one deck with another. I do like to change it up sometimes. Like, I like to interchange pairings of decks, but I do want to make a perfect pairs video at some point. But yeah, so I'm going to do the 2 decks that are in competition with each other in your collection. So right now, I have like a whole little basket of decks that are astrological decks because I'm studying astrology. And these 2 are just in competition with each other because they both have flaws. They both kind of suck in some way. But they both have astrological associations on the cards. And I don't really have any other tarot decks that work in that way for me. So that's why they're in competition with each other. But I wish I could like just have the perfect Zodiac deck. I don't know. So Zodiac Tarot is one of the most beautiful artworks I've ever seen on a deck. It is the most like me ever. This like celestial vibe on the people's clothing, the stars and the moons, and like the black background. This is so me. This is like my house. My living room and my bedroom have black walls, and I have like celestial things everywhere. I have a celestial ceiling in my bathroom. Like, this is so my vibe. But the cardstock is atrocious on this. Like, it's almost as bad as Modern Witch. It might be worse actually because the deck is big. I've trimmed the bottom of it to try to make it a little bit easier to handle, and it didn't really help much. It just had like black on the bottom, so the title wasn't right against the bottom. It's helped a little bit to like get my hand around it to shuffle it like this, but other than that, yeah. But it has the astrological symbol on it, which is helpful for me when I am studying tarot. I like to pull a tarot card like this that has the astrological associations, and you know, like this is the planet and the sign, and so I like to then go into my oracle decks that are astrology decks and pull an association for each one to make the reading deeper, but it helps me study. But I just cannot with the tactile experience of this deck. It is so off-putting. Tarot Magic is totally different as far as the cardstock. It's shuffleable. But this deck, which this is another one of those kind of pip style decks that I really love. Because it's very simple in its artwork. But this deck, it's black. But the cardstock, I don't know if you'd be able to see. It just looks like dirty and nasty. And I haven't even used it that much. But it like scuffs. There's scuffs and dirt and stuff on the deck. I think it's all scratched up, honestly. I don't know if it's like actual dirt. I have gone through and like tried to clean this deck off. But something about the finish on this, it just doesn't hold up. But yeah, this one has the associations on the deck as well. So these ones are in competition because I don't know if I need both, but both of them kind of serve something different in the like tactile experience of it. So I guess the only thing they're really in competition with each other is the astrological associations. I'm probably always just going to use this one. And then, you know, I'm going to keep both just because I love the artwork on this one so much. Even if I just use it as a reference, if I pull a card from this organically and then extract the same card from this one and kind of compare to help my study, I don't know. But yeah, this one also kind of competes with my Tarot by Caro, which I love that deck. But it has similar like the black background and the simpler pips and stuff. But yeah, I do like this deck. I like that it has like that gold metallic vibe going on. But I don't know. If any of you guys have the Zodiac Tarot in a tin and it's easier to shuffle, please let me know. So yeah, that was 2 decks that are in competition with each other in my collection. Or a pair of decks you always use together. So yeah, I did the competition one, but I am going to do a perfect pairs video at some point. So that is my VR to romance tropes. I had a lot of fun doing this. I haven't gotten out and like looked at my decks like this in a long time or made a tag about them and gushed about them. This was really, really fun. Please suggest some other tarot tags down below that are kind of like popular right now or have been in the past few months, because I'm gonna go back and do some of these. Another one is like, I think there's like a mid-year tarot tag I want to do. I don't know, there's a lot of fun ones that I want to do. Anyways, I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much to Tarot Magpie for making this, and I love the playlist. I'm like watching all of those on there. But yeah, I love you guys so much. Please let me know if any of these decks are some of your favorites, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!